And it's Wednesday, so you know what that means. Woke Women Wednesday, we're live. Good morning to you, WWOC Media, Facebook.com. Is so excited to be back. I'm still reeling. We're all still reeling from the incredible month of March and celebrating Women's History Month. We had some bad sisters every week we got to bring to you, and we're going to continue that mission and that tradition on this week. Your host, Senator Dianne Wilkerson, with you this morning. And I always start by saying thank you to the sisters who had the vision. And that's the vision to know how important it is for us to have a medium through which we could get information to you and from you in a timely fashion of importance to Black and brown people in Greater Boston. We have been focusing on issues since 2 years. We're almost 2 years anniversary. Started in May of 2020, just 2 months into COVID, if you will. And so we do every week. You know, we talk about we say all things Black, brown, and COVID, which really means all things because it has impacted and infiltrated every single aspect of our lives. And so today we continue. I'm here on Wednesday morning at 11, and of course at 8 p.m. my fierce and fearless sister, warrior, city councilor, Julia Mejia, she closes it out. So I open in the morning, she closes in the evening, but it's all about information and knowledge, and we're happy to do it. Today, no exception. I have a very, very special guest and a very special topic. Again, we talk about so much about healthcare. We've talked about COVID. We've talked about health disparities, health inequities, and there's actually something playing out right in the middle, in the heart of our community that we love called Roxbury, that is raising every single piece of those different issues. And that is what was supposed to be, right, like a gift to us, a complete rehabilitation of that park that we call Washington Park. It's called Malcolm X Park. You know, it's become such a part of the history of the community. You see the baseball, the softball players. You see the basketball courts. You see the tennis courts. You see the on the left-hand corner, although it is not owned by the city of Boston, but that's where the Melnia Cast swimming pool is. One of the few Olympic-sized pools, literally in the city, and that we are looking and hoping it'll be opening soon. And if you've been by the park recently, you'll notice it is completely gated by those big, ugly, construction gates all around the park, because the city of Boston has decided that it's time to do a major redesign of the park. And that redesign has really just set off a whole host of conflict, of discussions, where the community is once again like pitted, and against the city government, trying to make sure that whatever plans they have end up leaving us better off and not worse. And so no issue, I think, more important. We think about the park. We drive up and down Martin Luther King Boulevard, not really always appreciating that it literally sits in the center of the city. That's Roxbury, the center. But it also sits in the center of a community that has the largest number of children, for example. My guest is going to talk about how all of this is playing out in this, what would normally be, right, a wonderful opportunity for rehab park. But so many people in our community have said, not so fast. Mella Bush, even aside from her work affiliation with ACE, has been one of those voices, the constant conscience, and reminding us and pressing us on the importance of the air that we breathe, what happens around us, our environment, things that are relatively new for so many people, Mella, but you're going to tie this all together. So first, I want to welcome you to Woke Women Wednesday. I want to introduce you to many, and certainly just present to some, introduce to the rest, because so many people will see your face and be familiar. Good morning, Mella. How are you?
Good morning. I'm well. I rested after a long night of community organizing. And so I'm here and I'm glad to be here and thank you for having me.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So, Mela, I want really you to start. What is going on at Malcolm X Park, and why should we be concerned?
Well, Malcolm X Park is my front yard. And right now, there is a move to make improvements, air quotes, to the park, which would include upgrades to the athletic facilities, a new tot lot, a new splash pad for the toddlers, although they already have one on the DCR. And the bigger kids tend to dominate. So they said, oh, let's give one to the smaller children. So this is all lovely. But this park is about 3 or 4 parks in one. Um, and one major part of it is a park called Honeysuckle Hill. It's the forest in the middle of Roxbury. It's a place that is the original park that is over 150, 160 years old, designed by the Olmsted architect, landscape architect firm back in the 1800s. And so here we have this beautiful park with old growth trees that the canopy comes almost down to the ground when the leaves are there and they're heavy on the branches, and a whole host of different types of trees there. And so what's happening is the designer of the improvements decided to make quote unquote improvements to Honeysuckle Hill. That would include cutting down old growth legacy trees that have been standing there for some at least 100 years, and to replace them with paths that to lead to some park features like an amphitheater outdoor classroom, or that will lead to more accessible access to the athletic courts. And so it's become an issue of trees over paths. And the we have a visitor.
That's okay. Keep talking. This is life. That's how we live, honey.
Yes, and that is my great granddaughter, and I'm doing what I'm doing now for her and her little sister because they are our future, and we need to be able to leave something for them to be able to inherit that will benefit them. So the goal of the city and the Parks and Recreation Department, whose is mandated to preserve the tree canopy and to preserve and to add more trees to our parks, has decided that they need to cut down a whole bunch of trees. And they told us, we found out about a month ago that 54 trees were destined to be cut down so that they could make some of the paths more accessible, but also to add features to the park that they could have worked around. They could have made paths around these trees. They could have not decided to place those features in the spots where they decided to place them. And those are so that's what there's been kind of a battle to try and preserve those legacy trees, and so that we can have them for that little lady who was just behind me. So that's the big deal. And so we've tried to work with the city. We got them to agree that they would not touch the hill, not cut down all of those trees. They were still determined to cut down some, or to even make accommodations to be able to preserve the trees without cutting them down. And we thought we were moving in a good direction up until last night.
But I'm going to ask you to kind of connect the dots. What's the big deal? What so they cut down some trees, right? And we end up with a bigger tot lot. Isn't that a good thing? Or a larger basketball courts where you can ride around in the park and move around in the park with some ease, and particularly concern around the making sure that people with some mobility challenges will be able to enjoy every aspect of the park. Why is that? What's the problem with that?
There's actually no problem with that. And none of us want to make that the problem. Um, Working so that we are together holistically as a society where everyone has access to what everyone else has access to is the most important thing, that we are not dividing along lines of able-bodied versus less able-bodied or disabled-bodied people. So that's not the problem. The problem is, and the problem is that to divert the attention away from the problem, which is the trees need to stay there. And there are other disabilities that are being impacted by the removal of trees. Right now, we're sitting in a hot spot of the 18th highest capital city of asthma rates in the country. And I have three children who have asthma, and my son has chronic and severe asthma. And cutting down the trees reduces the air quality in our communities. People don't really understand, some people don't understand the value of trees. Trees absorb carbon dioxide, which is greenhouse gas emissions, pollution, all of those things. And they're breathing. They're breathing in the opposite way that we breathe. We breathe out carbon dioxide, the trees breathe it in. They exhale oxygen so that we can breathe, and they become the lungs of our community. And the less trees you have, the harder the other trees have to work. And eventually, those trees start to give up and die off, and they can't do what our Creator has put them here to do. And so that's why we're saying there are other disabilities. And what is the point of a person, even in a wheelchair, not being able to breathe while they try to go up and enjoy a park? The park is for everyone, and the park is benefiting our entire community. Those trees are central to our community's survival. I wanted to read something that I want to quote David Tracy in a book called The Earth Manifesto, Saving Nature with Engaged Ecology. He said, "We live in critical times, and the choices we make daily will affect the future of life itself. Years from now, children will study our era on the brink and ask their elders, when the planet was burning, what did you do?" Problems as big as the world are daunting, but solutions are at hand within each one of us. In the Earth Manifesto offers an approach to regain control of our environmental destiny by rediscovering our affinity for nature and then acting to preserve it. That is our charge
Yeah.
for our future. And this is something that is at my heart. I'm an environmental leader in the environmental leadership program, senior fellow, a whole host of things. I worked on Boston's climate action plan. I worked with Greenovate Boston programs. I've done so much and worked so hard and lectured all over the country and the continent on climate change, on environmental justice. And it's the center of my work and my being because of my asthmatic son, who I am trying to, in these 62 years around the sun that I have made, trying to leave something for him and to help him to breathe, to live as long as I and longer. It's for them. It's for the babies.
When I hear you talk about this, I thought about this last night during the city sponsored community meeting. Um, I realized how much educating that we have to do and that we do really just in our day-to-day lives, because most people would not make a connection between the decision to mow down trees in the middle of that beautiful park and my breathing and the asthma. You said it. I think if you think of the trees all in our community, because we have so much asphalt and blacktop, right? So when we have trees, they're precious. But if you think of the trees as the nature's natural air purifier outside, we go to the stores and buy them for inside. But outside, the trees are serving that very role, soaking up, like you said, the carbon monoxide and spewing out oxygen, like they cleanse it that for us to breathe. And so every tree is precious. I think the other thing is, I'm going to ask you to go to that next step, and that is you talked about your son's condition, but you and I share the concern, the passion around the health disparities that our people suffer disproportionately higher, be directly connected to the environmental harms that are put upon us every day as we're just trying to walk around and live our lives. And so this place, this spot, this park that sits in the center of Roxbury happens to sit in the same place that is the center of the largest number of school-age children, right?
Yes.
7,000 and some to 7 to 8,000 in that greater Roxbury within a 5 mile radius, and has, as you said, not 18th in the country, but the highest concentration of childhood asthma in the state of Massachusetts is right there. And so we don't take lightly to any action that just is going to come in and mow down the protection, the little protection that we have. And so I think making people understand that this is not about us not being supportive, of people in who are physically challenged from being able to move around in the park. We want everyone to enjoy it. But
Yes.
breathing freely is the enjoyment we want for everyone. So we cannot, we're not going to get pitted. But I really want you to talk about the asthma piece because you do that so well and know it too, and know how important this is when you talk about heat pads.
Yeah. So right here, there is a hot spot. It's Melnia Cass and Massachusetts Avenue have the hottest spot in the city of Boston is right there. It's called an urban heat island. It's all concrete, it's highway, there's all kinds of various different types of pollutants that are concentrated in our communities. And there's a heat. If you go on the City of Boston's website right now, you can go and look at the heat and climate study and see where the hot spots are. Well, right there on Martin Luther King Boulevard, right outside the park, you see it a glowing orange and red. But when you look at that hill, it's blue and it's cool. So the asthma issue, which my son has been hospitalized in the emergency room, the ICU, all sorts of things over since he was 8 years old. And he over 30, 42 times now that he's been in and out of the hospital. The the issue is old growth trees, and not old growth trees, old homes. These old homes that we have in Boston, a lot of them have stuff hiding behind the walls, like mold and things like that. But the other issue around air pollution is what I really want to focus on right here. There is something called PM 2.5. That's particulate matter. And the climate crisis that we're in, according to the International Panel on Climate Change of the United Nations report that was released last month, is saying that if you raise the temperature of the Earth over 1.7 degrees, I believe, more higher than what it is, the whole Earth temperature, that we're in a catastrophic situation. The PM the PM 2.5 levels are very high because we're near buses. There was a bus yard that was right over across the street from where we live that was closed down due to our efforts back in the early 2000s, and now it's becoming affordable housing. The other particulate, I don't want to use words that we don't use in everyday speech, but the other particles that are floating around in the air are something called ultrafine particles, and they're caused by a lot of highway and truck traffic and things like that. And those are so fine that they're almost not a solid. There's some, and they're hard to measure because they're between a solid and a gas. Well, the Union of Concerned Scientists did a study on the ultrafine particles and found that the people who were being most impacted are Latin X communities, residents of Boston, Black residents of Boston, and Chinese residents of Boston.
Because of where
Out
we live, right?
because of where we live. And that's why the tree connection is so important, because it's constantly filtering out that carbon dioxide, the particulate matter. You don't dig up trees because the carbon is buried in the soil. And when you rip it out, all of that is more carbon released into the air, causing more climate change, more heat islands. And there is this stack effect of environmental impacts that happen to our communities because they don't think that we matter. They don't think that we care. And because we're so distracted by trying to survive everyday life with work and everything else, and all of the challenges that we have as a community, that we don't often show up to the meetings about climate and environment. We think, oh, that's tree hugging. That's for the white people or something like that. I'm a tree hugger. I've been hugging trees for a really long time because I know that I need them. And I do fight for the trees. We fight to, and I hate to use the word fight, but we advocate and organize around clean running buses, clean running cars, running trains. I do a lot of work in transportation, justice, and
Yeah.
advocacy, and that's my focus on that type of. But we also say don't cut down the trees next to the train track because the train still has diesel power engines, and those trees are filtering out that from getting into our airways and blocking them up and giving everybody
We have to
respiratory
educate. Yeah,
conditions.
we got
Yeah,
to educate our folks about it because otherwise, like you said, just going about life trying to stay alive.
yeah,
I think of all the kids I used to, because I live not far from there as well. Want our listeners and viewers to understand that you literally are sitting outside. It's a beautiful day, but you're literally in like looking at the park. Like it's like you said, your front yard, right? Your front yard. So here's the it's just so much. I think about how we even got here. Just 4 weeks ago, not a long time ago, 4 weeks ago, um, some neighbors right on the Dale Street side happened to
mhm,
walk out in the morning and notice that a large number of the trees in front of their house that are in Malcolm X Park had huge, like 3 feet tall, orange crosses on them.
right.
Like, what the heck is that? Only to learn that the contractor that the city hired for the redesign project of the park had literally gone through the park with orange paint and painted huge orange crosses on the trees to mark the ones that they planned on taking down. It was the first time, even for the many community members who in fact had been involved in the process and discussing and meetings, never had a notion, never had a map that said here are the trees that are coming down. And it just set off a lot of activity where we learned, yes, that's what the orange crosses are. I mean, they look like bullseyes, right?
I think they're when I looked up another like image online, I found that there is an extinction symbol that is kind of like an hourglass with a circle around it. And some of our millennials who have been fighting against climate change made this a universal symbol of extinction. How ironic that they spray painted that on our trees. Oh my gosh,
But you
unbelievable.
know what, too? You know what I remembered when I saw that? I thought about Katrina, because I remember that as this emergency respondents were going through houses and found bodies, they were marking the houses with the cross, meaning there was a dead body inside.
Oh my God.
So I think it was most appropriate when the director, the chief of environmental services used the word triggering. Those crosses were triggering. But here's my point that I want to share with people. Nowhere else in the city does the city contractors or anyone who is marking trees do it by spray painting X's on the trees. They're ribbons. If you go right now to the other projects that the city has, where private and not, right now, where they have trees, I heard them talking about different parks or Rosendale and the like. If you go right now and you look to where they're doing redesign, whether it's Charlestown, you'll see ribbons.
Yes.
So they get ribbons. They get ribbons, nice ribbons tied around, right? Maybe a stick, a push pin.
Push pin with a sign, but ribbons that they could snip off.
With X's on it, like you died. And so, of course, now people should know we've gotten lots of apologies for it, because even the city acknowledged your contractor was out of line. But again, what you said, Mela, they can do that because it's Roxbury, right?
Right. Because
no big deal.
And they probably thought we weren't even going to notice. The other problem with the reason why the trees became such a flashpoint for those of us who are awake and woke and who are paying attention to what's going on is the fact that they did not take up the issue of trees during the 2-year-long, in the middle of a pandemic, community process to look at the design and engage with the community about the park. That was a number 5 priority of the people who were, when they surveyed them, about what they thought was most important. And they said the trees. They said security. They said the trees. There was no effort to address the security challenges in Malcolm X Park. And there are people who are so afraid that they were like, cut down those trees. They're blocking the site on the hill. And, to which we explained, if you cut down every tree on this hill, there'll still be a public safety problem that needs to be addressed. That's a different issue for another day. But today we need to talk about breathing.
The notion that the trees are in the way, So here's what I thought about that piece is that part of the reason you just made the point that even in the 2 years of discussion that the city did have with the community about the plans for redesign of the park, there was never a discussion about the trees. And when they put the orange crosses on the trees and the community went berserk, they were shocked. The city said, I didn't know that they were concerned about trees.
Right. They didn't expect us to care. And it's such a spiritual place. When you go up there and you sit down and you meditate, or you go for walks around, or even roll in a stroller. And there are people who said they go for rides around the top of the hill in their wheelchair. It wasn't that they couldn't get in. They made that the issue, saying people can't navigate every nano fraction of an inch of the park in a wheelchair, which that's not what usually people do in parks. They go to the parks that they want to enjoy. And we found that part of the park is...
there's so much that we could share with people about this, but I want to tie this together to what our mission, right? And give people some information about how they might follow up and stay on top of this. One is that this is all connected. That's why I say, the life is connected. So on Monday, a federal judge in Florida vitiated the national mask mandate. So as of yesterday, immediately, you no longer have to wear masks on trains, planes, buses, you know, my position is if I'm leaving out of this house, I might be wearing a mask for the next 20, 30 years, depending on where I am, because I've learned a lot in this last 2 years about the reality of how we live. And so if you think, you know, so take off your mask, but let us knock down the trees and put more poison in and let loose more poison in the community, right? It's connected. The other thing that I think is worth celebrating is because, you know, our community, we have been constantly challenging other communities to stand with us when we have issues, because we stand with others often, right? Um, Black folk almost single-handedly responsible for the advancements in civil rights and women's voting rights, and what, you know, so because that's what we do, right? We go in, we knock it down, we make it nice for everybody else. We need support now, right? And I have been both encouraged because we've got people coming from Jamaica Plain, from Rosendale, from Beacon Hill, from Charlestown, from South Boston, to say we're going to stand with you, right? We're standing with you because we acknowledge and support the maintenance of the trees as well. Our parks belong to all of us. I think that it's the second time in a year where I've seen that kind of collaboration. The first being on question 3 to reinstate an elected school committee, when every single precinct and every single ward in the city of Boston voted yes on the question. There has never been any matter on our ballot where that's the case. So I celebrate that. And the reason I mentioned that as we're leaving is because what I've also seen in this last few weeks is people who ought to know better telling people who don't live in Roxbury, who come to support us protecting our park, that you don't have any right to be here, right?
Right.
And that I hope that's not going to be our new mantra. I pray that it is not. I challenge, you know, I challenge white folks every day that you got to say stuff. You got to say stuff. We can't be the ones who speak out. The reason why the exam school process was expanded to include more of our children is because white and Asian communities, people across this city, stood next to those Black and Latino students and say, we have some smart ones too, right? And
Right.
so that's my takeaway to celebrate from this, is what I see happening with communities coming to support what's happening in Roxbury, right?
And
that
yes.
It's about time. I love it. And if we see and hear people challenging that, Mela, we got to say no. Oh no, we welcome you. We welcome you.
We all marched. We marched side by side during the Black Lives Matter, saying you can't lynch a man with your knee and kill him in broad daylight while children film. You know, and who was there? There was everybody. It wasn't just Black people. They all started marching right here from Malcolm X Park and marched all the way to downtown to the Boston Common. And they were marching side by side with
That's
us.
right.
When we took the youth and did a Black Lives Matter, a rally and march, little children organized it. And it was all the children, all different colors of people, race, ethnicity, religion. Everybody was there marching together. And so we're all in the same boat.
That's right.
Here.
That's
and we
right.
have to get an oar and stop paddling. This earth is our earth. It's not going to survive unless we wake up right now and we all start doing something to be the change that we want to see. Angela Davis said, I am no longer willing to accept the things that I cannot change. I am changing the things that I cannot accept. And someone was wearing that quote on their shirt at the park while we were talking about the trees. And I was so inspired by my favorite quote from, one of my heroes that was right there. I took a picture of it. I'll share it with you. It's amazing.
Please do. And you'll come back, because we're going to be at this for a while, because we're dealing with not just the trees, but even the very materials that are chosen to be placed in our park. When you have major sports teams removing turf because they realize that it exudes toxic chemicals that are harmful not only mess up the legs and your knees, but harmful to be breathing those chemicals. But what do? Oh, we're gonna use some turf. We're gonna put turf in Malcolm X Park, and
outside of the park. They developed it for inside because all the grass used to die inside of the Houston Astrodome. That's the name AstroTurf. They said, well, let's make an artificial grass to put inside of a building. Why are you going and capping off the ecosystem, killing all the wildlife, and causing people? Oh, it also damages the reproductive systems and can cause cancer for the children who play on that surface. We wanted to talk about that last night, but they decided that it was off the list of topic points.
We got it. Then we're going to make that point. I'm like I said, I'm going to have you back, and our time is up. It goes. I told you it goes quickly.
Yes,
I told you it goes very quickly. But we're at it. We are determined that whatever our tax monies that are used to beautify our community don't kill us in the process, right? that we have a say, because they work for us. And don't ever forget that, people. Don't ever forget it. The good news and the great news about WWOC is that, most of our folks in the daytime, what happens, and I always tell them, within an hour after we're done, we'll be sharing this time with you. And I tell folks, Friday night, Saturday night or whatever, get your cup of tea or a cup of wine and sit and watch it. It's always informative. I guarantee you're always going to learn something, because we have such well-read and knowledgeable and active guests who always bring information like you did today. So I want people to remember that. And again, you do what you want. I'm going to say to you, keep wearing your mask.
Yes.
So you look up and they say so-and-so, COVID is gone. No more variants, no more nothing. And then by the time that happens, there'll probably be another one coming around the corner. So I'm masking. You
I'm
still
just
be
masking.
practical about what you do. There'll be places where you're okay. I'm not getting on a plane. I'm not getting on a train. I'm not getting on a bus. I'm not walking around in a public space where there are lots of people in an enclosed space, buildings, without a mask on. That's just the bottom line. I say that's for me and mine, and I consider mine to be this whole community. And so, Mela Bush, I thank you. Look forward to continuing this process. We're going to have people in the Malcolm X Park, inviting folks to come on Saturday. Certainly, the organization that was created for this battle, the Community Stewards and Friends of Malcolm X Park. Google them. Find, go please. It's really
join, donate, support. Yes, it's a 501c3. It's all registered, and you can just go to. You have to type in Community Stewards and Friends of Malcolm X Park, because there are other Friends of Malcolm X Park.
Exactly. Community Stewards and Friends of Malcolm X Park. Sign up, become a member, and be with us to protect, preserve, enhance, and continue to beautify our park, and through that process, our community. So thank you. We'll be back next week, folks. I'll tell you, you're going to see my fierce and fearless colleague, City Councilor Julia Mejia, will be with you at 8 this evening. I'll be back next week. Guarantee you always, WWOCradio.com. We're always going to have information on everything, Black, brown, and we stay in the fight. Wear your mask, stay safe, check on your people, and God bless you till next week. Bye-bye.
Peace. Goodbye.